I read a comment that basically said that it seems that too many pilots focus too much on their instruments. And is that actually true? Do they only rely on the instruments to perform their flight? And one thing is for sure, there are so many complex instruments. Yo, what's up? My name is Manuel, and today this is a typical aviation video which I haven't done in like a month, and I apologize for you for that. And so, for now, we're gonna continue doing them. And for today's topic is, do pilots focus too much on the instruments? We're gonna answer that question. So let's first talk about the usefulness of the instruments. And yes, I think this is no surprise that the instruments of every single aircraft are like 100% useful. They should never be ignored. I mean, there are circumstances, but you should never ignore like the essentials, like the airspeed indicator and all that stuff. Like, instruments are the most important thing. But how much time you have to focus on them may actually vary, because there are two flight models, what you have to understand. The first one is VFR, Visual Flight Rules. And VFR, you focus not really too much on the instruments, but you mostly focus on what's going on the windshield, what's going on outside, where are you based on mountains, hills, highways, rivers, lakes, all those visual cues that require and that don't require instruments at all, which means that you only look at the instruments like 50% of the time, more or less. Then there is IFR, Instrument Flight Rules, which is quite the opposite. You focus more on the instruments instead of the windshield, which basically means that the weather isn't that good, or you're in an airline flight, which most of them are IFR, and you look at the instruments around 80% of the time, maybe 85%, 90. It depends, but here's the truth. Pilots don't 100% rely on the instruments. I don't say that instruments are not 100% useful. That's different, but the fact that they don't 100% rely on the instruments is totally different, and that is what you have to understand. Before we get into the why, let's get into what supports the fact that pilots focus too much on the instruments. First of all, each pilot knows every single system of the aircraft they're flying. I mean, because this is essential. You can't just fly an aircraft that you have no idea what a certain system is. Otherwise, you wouldn't be well trained. And yeah, that is actually illegal to do that. And especially since after what happened to the Boeing MCAS situation. And so yeah, that is why it is an essential to know that. And the second argument is the fact that you want to know what speed, altitude, vertical speed, or attitude, whether your engine's on fire, whether you have fuel, and you can't know the exact status of your aircraft using only your windshield or using only what's going outside. I mean, there are circumstances, but those are very special circumstances that they don't happen on a day-to-day basis. You have to look at the instruments. The instruments are the only thing that tells you what airspeed you are, what altitude you are, and what vertical speed at exact numbers, which is something essential you need, especially if ATC requires you to, I don't know, climb at a certain speed, or climb at a certain vertical speed, or etc. And that is very essential to know. And the fact that pilots do rely on the instruments. However, pilots don't 100% rely on the instruments. And here are many arguments actually. And one very important one is the fact that most of the procedures involve a visual confirmation, because you can't just say that, oh, the instrument says this, I have to completely trust in it, and I have to 100% base this as completely true, and I have to continue the procedure. No, you can't necessarily do that. One good example is the approach checklist. During the approach checklist, you have to actually have a visual conversation, a confirmation that the runway is directly ahead of you, because the instruments can be a little bit flawed, or worse, it could be very flawed, which could lead to an accident or even a catastrophe or something. And that is what every single airline is trying to avoid, every single pilot is trying to avoid. And a visual confirmation of the runway is completely essential. The second thing is the walk around. The walk around basically means that you have to check every single inch of the aircraft surface before you even fly. And that is basically a visual confirmation. Sorry, a visual confirmation before you actually fly, because when you take off and the pitot tube, which is what measures the airspeed, is damaged, then the airspeed indicator would indicate something wrong, and this could lead to an accident or even a canceled flight. You have to go back to the airport because something is wrong with your airspeed. That is why you have to do the walk around. Now, the other argument is the fact that they know what they're doing, because it's not like just the pilots don't completely base their lives of the aircraft to the instruments. They know exactly where they're going based on many other factors. And it's not like just, oh, the navlog says I have to follow heading 152. I just have to follow heading 152, and I just see if I arrive at my destination. That's all. No, you have to exactly know what circumstances you are, what is going on with your surroundings, and all that stuff that could and will affect your flight, which is essential for any pilot training. And then the final thing, which is very important, is what if the instruments don't work? What if all of those systems, or maybe some of them, actually don't work? Because not like just they are permanent and they will never be flawed. Well, yes, there are circumstances that they will be flawed, and that is why pilots need to be trained in order to deal with them, and or worse, I mean, they have to expect to for those circumstances to happen. Because what if your instruments go black? And your instruments go black, and this can mean that your battery is dead, or the generators are gone for whatever reason, and some of those things might happen, and your instruments are dead, and you have to rely this time on the visual cues. And that is why pilots are trained to not just rely on the instruments. Now, here's a question that I actually hear from you. What if it's a Cat 3 condition? Cat 3 conditions meaning by the fact that the entire windshield is opaque due to the fact that the entire area is completely misty and you can't see a thing. That is something that sometimes happens, and you have to do one of two things. If the aircraft is not built for Cat 3 conditions, then you have to go to the alternate airport, or cancel your flight, or do anything that's necessary to avoid those circumstances, because those are quite dangerous, especially if the aircraft is not built for it. And then if it's built for it, such as an airliner, and most modern airliners are built for Cat 3 conditions, then you have to wisely execute a Cat 3 approach. I'm talking about if you're landing at an airport that has Cat 3 conditions, you have to execute a Cat 3 landing, which means that that the autopilot manages the entire situation, and basically you have to rely on the instruments. But those are special circumstances, and this means that only those aircraft which are very modern and the technology is very advanced, they can manage those situations. But there could be exceptions that they have to cancel certain flights and certain airline flights, which, and to be honest, it is not 100% safe to do the Cat 3 conditions. So in the end, the instruments are very important. I'm not trying to, trying to make you ignore them. No, they are very important and you should never ignore them. But they should not replace the utility of the visual cues. And secondly, every pilot is trained to always expect the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario being that the instruments are not working correctly, and you have to base on your eyesight or your feelings, even your feelings, and to know if this certain situation or this certain reading of the instrument is actually true or not. And finally, they evolve their quick thinking skills in such a way that the chances of an airplane disaster are really slim, because if that would happen, if the instruments go black, the pilots are already trained for that, in which any catastrophe like that, such as a crash in the mountains, such as what happened in the Andes with the rugby team, they actually crashed, but that was actually in the 1970s, if I believe. So right now they are especially trained to avoid those situations and to bring the passengers from A to B safely. One very important thing to remember is the fact that technology still hasn't replaced human beings, which is the main argument for the fact that pilots can't 100% rely on instruments. So that is it. I hope you enjoy. Please like this video and subscribe if you actually really want to see more of these videos coming out, because I haven't uploaded in a month, and I will upload more, which is something I will consider for you, and I will be mentioning many other aviation topics, which, especially if you mention them in the comment section like I did in this video, I will especially look for them and make a video for them. With that being said, thank you so much for watching, and happy flying.